Hello, everybody. This is Rob Fredette with HODGEPOD. I have another special episode today, and I've actually asked my brother Rick to join me on this podcast, and we're going to be talking about situational awareness, can talk about how the event businesses have evolved over the years. When you go to a game or a concert or just everyday life with situational awareness. I want to introduce my brother. He's been in the business for how many years now, Rick? Well, first of all, welcome, and why don't you introduce yourself?
Hey, thanks. This is Rick Fredette, Rob's brother. Appreciate the invite and the opportunity to be on your podcast. I've listened to some of yours, and they're really good, and
Thank you.
So appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you very much. So, how long have you been in the business? You've done all kinds of stuff in the business. What's your current role now, and what are some of the things you've done in the past, which I find to be pretty cool?
So I've been in the business for 32 years. Started as an event coordinator in Memphis, working at an arena. And over the years, I've worked, been at a couple of arenas, been at a university, managing an athletic
It's 7 o'clock.
complex. Worked at a for 11 years. Worked at a NFL stadium, and now at a convention center in Florida.
Wow. So this podcast, we're going to talk about like how the business has changed over the years. And, when we go to a concert or a game, or you go out shopping or whatnot, it's all about situational awareness, but everybody goes to have a good time at a game. How has the business evolved, the event business evolved over the years for safety of everybody involved?
Going back when I started in this business, I was in there planning events and dealing with security and the production managers with the show on event security and ticket taking and all of those things. And now going over the events, and it seemed pretty straightforward. You'd plan the event. You'd have, a certain security detail for the show itself. You'd have a security detail for, the front of house ticket takers, and the crowds and all that stuff based on the type of event that it was, whether it was a concert, a family show, anything like that. Is certainly different levels. But then over the years, as certain events have happened in the world, not just in the event business, but just globally. A lot of those things have changed how we plan events and how we look at events before, during, and after.
Yeah, interesting, because when you go to a game, you don't think about things like that. The fans just go to the game, but it's evolved over the years. So when attending events, basically. There are a lot of things that come into play. So while I'm doing research for this, I was looking back at some events that have happened over the years at concerts or games. Just a few instances. In 1979, The Who was supposed to play at Cincinnati Riverfront Stadium. They had 18,000 tickets sold for the concert in Cincinnati, and there were only 25 police officers allotted for crowd control. So basically, there was a band playing prior to the gates opening at 8 o'clock, and this was at 7:45, and people trampled to get in, and 11 people were killed. So that goes to pretty much to crowd control, but things evolve over time, don't they?
Officers back then, now 25 police officers is, I wouldn't say even on some events, especially on a show like that, is probably not even 25% of the call, or, is certainly very, very low. I mean, there's, the calls now, just in the convention center business, there's some events that we have about 20 officers, just depending on the event type. Certainly a crowd that size now is you're talking certainly a lot more than that.
Right. And the stadiums have gotten bigger and bigger and bigger with more amenities and more things to do. So over the years, the stadiums have evolved. When you go to a game, it's not about the game, but it's the experience. So when you're looking at how it has evolved, is there best practices over time when there are events that it gets sent out to event folks in the business just to give best practices?
Yeah. So, again, starting back in the early 90s when I got into the business, it was you had a call and, whether it be event security showing up, police would show up, you would have that call. There would be a short briefing before the event, going over show times, any issues that might have happened at previous shows. Again, looking at whether there's contraband checks, what time alcohol sales are going to close, and all of those things. But just over the years, the planning process has certainly become more intense. Not just on for the event itself, but also those things that don't or that initially didn't happen back then. And let's look at look at whether they be active shooter events, whether it be people trying to trying to drive a car through maybe some entrance doors or, vehicle ramming, things like that. And it could be as simple. There are people that are out there that just want to cause problems, wreak some havoc, and just be a disruption to the event itself.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. There's been a sudden uptick in people who are going to concerts now, going up on stage and like hitting the performer or grabbing the microphone. I saw something the other day on social media, on Instagram. Some guy got up there with Bryan Adams and he started singing Summer of '69, and the security guards like whisked him away. And it was kind of a light moment, I guess, at the concert, which is really not a light moment. And Bryan Adams just sang the song like nothing happened, but it's crazy. People want to become part of the event, or I don't understand what the logic is in that, because that's pretty stupid to do.
Well, yeah, one of the things I've noticed, at least, and I'll say just in the last couple of weeks on the news, is people throwing stuff at the performers. Yeah. And they've been like cell phones, and they're throwing them, for the performer to take a selfie and throw the phone back. Well, they're throwing the phones, and it's hitting these performers like in the head or in the face, or upper torso area. And obviously that's dangerous. They can, that could put the end to a show. Look at the Tour de France, I guess it was yesterday, where somebody was taking a selfie or stepped out into the course and knocked over, I don't know, 10 or 12 riders.
Yeah, that was recently. And there was one a couple of years ago too. A woman was getting a selfie with a sign, and like 15 to 20 bikers got knocked out of the race. I don't know if they ever found her, but everybody wants to get that picture at that moment, so they can be seen, at the event. But yeah, it's getting very dangerous when you're seeing performers get hit in the head with phones. I don't think it was Harry Styles, if I'm not mistaken, or he got hit, and it's just crazy because somebody can get, and it's just not that. Lately, I see some performers falling off stages.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
So how, when you think of
one of the things you brought up, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I was just going to say you brought up a situational awareness at the beginning, and just taking it on a personal level, looking at it, and I don't know if it's just because I've been in the business, or that's things that I was always that were brought to my attention early on, but just taking it on a personal level. Now, how many people nowadays, when they walk into a building, whether, an office building that they've never been before, going to a show, going to the airport, going to the mall, just anywhere, or even going to a hotel, you're, spending the weekend somewhere on a weekend getaway. How many people, and I hope it's a high number, but how many people look at where the emergency exits are?
Mm-hmm.
Looking at, if something were to happen, where do I go? Where's the quickest exit?
Right.
You can look at it when fire alarms go off in the building. How many people start moving towards the exits? Just those things. And sometimes it's, I think people, just human nature, people get complacent. But that, I think some of that all, begins there as that situational awareness, knowing where you are. And if something happens, what are you going to do? Where are you going to go? How are you going to react?
Yeah. When my wife and, Donna and I, when we go out, we always look where the exits are, where easy access is. And you really got to know what your surroundings are. Like when you're going into a parking lot, be aware of what's going on in the parking lot. And you can definitely do that. So, disasters don't have to be crowd control. It can be things like the 1989 World Series in San Francisco. There was a earthquake that lasted 15 seconds and did billions in damage during the 1989 World Series. So I guess the thing is that just, assess the situation when something happens, but it doesn't have to be just man-made. It can be Mother Nature as well.
Oh, absolutely. Earthquakes and certainly here in Florida we are in the beginning part of hurricane season, and we can certainly, earthquakes, they're trying to predict those and being able to tell when they may happen. Certainly a hurricane, we have the weather meteorologists,
Mm-hmm.
Telling us where that storm is and how it's tracking and all that stuff. But typically we don't know up until maybe, 48, 72 hours of roughly where that's going to go. But us as a building, and certainly as individuals, we can plan for that. We can get, the 3 to 5 days worth of food and water and those things, where earthquakes and some of that you can't. But we can plan for those, and we do plan for those, just in the event that we would get hit by a Category 4 or 5 hurricane, where we are right in South Florida.
Yeah. And
so there's you can plan for some, you can't plan for everything, but not planning at all or having hope as your plan doesn't work. Hope is not a plan.
Got it. That's exactly right. You said South Florida. When I worked in South Florida back in the mid 90s, I was working at Pro Player Stadium, and we had a straight line win at Pro Player Stadium where the Dolphins and Marlins played. And I was up on the 400 level, which is like the upper deck. And I saw a straight line win, 80, 90, 100 miles an hour, pick up a 2,000-pound cart and just toss it like it was nothing. And it absolutely destroyed the cart, and it put divots in the concourse, and it went several feet in the air until it landed. So, things are man-made, so you have to be aware of the situations around you. So what are there certain events or certain things that maybe, through your experience, that have changed how we live every day, or how we go about, going to things we enjoy doing, like concerts, games, and things like that? Because there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes while we're enjoying having fun, and that is correct, isn't that?
Yeah, it's a lot different now. Like I said, the planning or the pre-planning for events is certainly more intense, more comprehensive. It's not just the venues working with the shows, or it's the venues. You're actually, whatever the promoter or the organizer, the venue itself, the security companies, the police, a lot of, just the local agencies, you're actually having planning meetings that are could be weeks out, and you're actually having multiple meetings. There's, kind of what resources, obviously, what is the event? What type of event? What is the profile of the event? Certainly dictates staffing levels and what type of resources you're there, but you're including really more of the whole community, everything from traffic and the hospitals and medical and police and any all the local jurisdictions in that. But certainly now you're also having, especially with us, we're some of the events we do, we look at social media. See if anybody is disgruntled with the event maybe that we've had. We do some like a SuperCon or a Comic-Con type thing, and where there have been a couple of shootings at or incidents at some of those events across the country. And we look at those and we're seeing what type of social media posts and if anybody if they were at those shows, and so we're utilizing those resources to look at that social media to see if there's anything out there that might be could be a potential issue with us.
That's wild. I look back at getting research for this, and a couple of instances that I picked up were in 1977 in Southgate, Kentucky. The Beverly Hills Supper Club was a sprawling place in Kentucky, located just across Cincinnati. And this was a venue that had several events going on all at the same time this one night, including banquets, receptions, and a John Davidson concert. John Davidson from the late 70s. He was on TV all the time. Well, a fire broke out and was never determined what the fire was or how it happened. And a busboy had to make an announcement about the fire to the people at the Beverly Hills Supper Club fire. 165 people died in that, and it was meant for 600 people. There were at least 1,000 people inside that facility. And one other one that I totally forgot about, and it's amazing how time flies. But in 2011, and on August of 2011, at the Indiana State Fair, a stage collapsed where a storm or a high wind went through. 7 people died and 58 people were injured with the strong winds knocked down metal scaffolding and stage equipment into the packed crowd. Sugarland was supposed to be performing, and this happened. It was a horrible tragedy, and it's amazing things happen. It sheds to light what actually, procedures and new, I guess, regulations happen when these things happen. Is that what pretty much happens, Rick, when these bad things happen?
Yeah, I remember that the Indiana State Fair, because I was working at the racetrack then, and very similar. We had some instances when I was at the racetrack where we had some straight line winds where it and luckily we didn't have. It was after it was after like the day of events, and where it blew, actually blew over a 300-foot tent into our some of our grandstands, our temporary grandstands, and certainly the straight line winds are. I mean, those storms come in quick. They roll in, they're in quick. They do a lot of destructive damage, especially things that are not permanently bolted down or anchored down. So that one was kind of hit close because we had dealt with that. And yeah, that was, I don't remember a bunch of the details, but I think that storm did roll in pretty quick and it was tough to evacuate people away from the staging area.
Yeah, that's unbelievable when you think about it. When people go to an event and when tragedy happens like that, it's pretty horrible. What other things would you say that things have happened over the years, maybe that have not altered the way we live, but maybe have changed how we not maybe change how we live based on things that happen with disasters or thing like that? How what are maybe a couple of things that have changed over the years how we go about living our lives?
Well,
Your opinion.
certainly, the biggest 9/11 is
Hmm.
obviously at the top of the list. I think that's probably the most significant. I will say for me personally, and maybe most people that in how we live and how certainly how we go to any type of entertainment event.
Hmm.
Certainly. As how we go, maneuver through airports and how we maneuver through, um, just doing our daily lives. I think that's when the whole see something, say something kind of came about.
Hmm.
And which I think still holds true today. If you see something, I would say another one that probably, and again, 9/11 is certainly there, but I would say probably Hurricane Katrina.
Yep.
That was another big one, especially I think for if you look at what happened in New Orleans at the Superdome there, where the people were housed there for because they were worried about the levees breaking and they were there, but then all of a sudden the levees broke, and then the Superdome is surrounded by water.
Hmm.
So I think looking at where some of the they called mega shelters, where putting people in
Hmm.
venues that are can support a large number of people, whether it be for restrooms and showers and preparing food, and that if there has to be a major evacuation from low lying areas or certain areas, but it also makes you look at bringing all those people to that location, making sure they're not in putting them in other danger and being and having the resources there, because all of the things that happened with with supposedly incidents of people getting assaulted there, and that. So I think those two probably stick out the most, I guess, in looking back in over the last 15 or 20 years.
Yeah, I remember Hurricane Katrina back in 2005. I remember that. I was helping out
Yeah,
over in Little Rock, Arkansas, at the state fairgrounds with the people who had come up there from New Orleans to help feed them. I was working for Airmark at the time, and we went over there for Labor Day weekend. We went out there and helped feed them 3 meals a day, and it was very busy, but it was very gratifying to do. But yes, when people get displaced, then things have to happen. So what else? What else in the business, or what would you say, like for situational awareness, like maybe going out in the public? What would you think about situational awareness, like when you're going out to a mall, you're going out shopping, or things like that? What are some things that you could key on as you're going out? Because you always have to be aware of your surroundings. You have to be vigilant of what's going on around you, and never assume anything. So, what would be some of the things that you would maybe give advice to?
yeah. Well, again, situational awareness. Looking at it and and getting the maybe the textbook uh, definition of it. It's obviously the certainly knowing knowing where you're going, what could be some of the potential issues they may have, that there
Mm-hmm.
may be, certainly large crowds, if people are drinking, a number of those things. just knowing what your surroundings are, and understanding what they are, and if there is an incident, how are you going to respond, and what are you going to do? How are you going to escape, or get into a safe place? Like, I'm one of those people that does not like to sit in a restaurant with his back to the door.
Got it.
I like to be facing the door. I don't know where that came from. Probably just being in the business, and always being around law enforcement. Maybe I just picked that up from them. But just knowing what your surroundings are, knowing how you're going to respond, and obviously to protect yourself and your family.
Well, it's not being paranoid. It's being ready. It's being vigilant. It's being aware. Again, you're not being paranoid by knowing what door to go out or where to sit. It's about being ready to,
right.
When you're driving, be aware of what's around you when you're driving. It's not being paranoid. So I agree that 100%. You've worked in the business for over 30 years. So I know what events you've worked, but you've worked some pretty awesome events. You've worked Super Bowls. You've worked Final Fours. I think what else you've worked? You've worked car races. You've done tons of stuff. So what was it like working like the Super Bowls when you went there? You went there you went there to help out, but what was that like?
So I would say probably the Super Bowl, and the Final Fours are certainly the biggest events that I've worked, and certainly a lot of fun. I will say immediately after or after 9/11 happened, go to the Super Bowl at the Superdome in I guess it was 2002.
Yeah, New Orleans.
And in New Orleans, and I will say my perception of going to the Super Bowl then was more. It was definitely more going through a I don't want to say a battlefield, but very, very militaristic. I guess it was just a lot of National Guard and a lot of barricades, and just
that's right.
Just a lot of the security was intense in that. But then now, working the Super Bowls, back when I did back in what was 2013, 14, 15, I guess, back in there. Certainly working those events and seeing people come to those events was a lot more inviting. But certainly definitely still had the same security posture, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does.
In 2002, it was green, it was military, it was, it just looked like you were, it was just like, I don't want to say in a war zone, but yeah, it was kind of like that. And it was just very intimidating, because it was all military looking. And again, I know they were doing it to protect it, but the event itself was great. And certainly this was on the outskirts, especially getting to the Superdome. It was super, and was it was definitely more inviting, and certainly, but the security posture was just as intense, or for the spectators. People felt safe. You were, people coming and going.
Yeah, and that's when the Patriots played the Rams, so that was definitely a great game at the very end. Tom Brady won his first Super Bowl. So
Yeah.
You worked the Final Four back in 2016 when Villanova beat North Carolina, and I've always regretted I did not go to that. I was able. You had tickets lined up for me. I was going to go, and then I couldn't go because of work, and I still to this day regret not going to that Final Four. So you did offer the invitation, but I couldn't go because of work, and I still don't like that to this day. But nonetheless.
You probably got a cool souvenir out of it.
Yeah, I got some good swag from the Final Four, but it was good. So yeah, so things have really changed over the years, and like when you go to events, and it's amazing when you go to events, all the things that go on behind the scenes to pull it off. That's a lot of hard work for a lot of people who work at these venues. So they're there. I mean, the number one thing is safety. And that is paramount for everybody in that facility. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's definitely safety. We do a lot of planning, and all the venues do. They do a lot of planning for the events, making sure that again everyone is safe is the number one priority. But it's also making that people enjoy themselves and have an experience that they want to come back,
Mm-hmm.
and and trying to make all that happen, and it's definitely a tough job to do, but these events happen every day, and again, I think most of it is for people to enjoy themselves in the safest way.
Yeah, I agree. And when an event goes off like that, it definitely for the people who work in those venues, it's a win-win because everybody leaves happy whether their team wins or loses. So, what other things would you say about or situation awareness? Maybe that we have not covered as of yet. In your experience over the years, I think you've shed a lot of good light on situational awareness and things like that. Are there any other things that would come to mind when we're talking about this?
Yeah. So, and when you asked me to do this, it made me start thinking of uh, a couple of books that I read, and
Mm-hmm.
going back, and just there was a book that came out, and I think I picked it up, or it was mentioned at one of the conferences I went to in the industry, and it's a book called The Unthinkable, and it's by Amanda Ripley. And it came out in 2008, I think 2008, 2009, and I read it back then, I saw the book. When I thought about it, I saw the cover of the book, and I had to go out into the garage and dig it out, and I found it. But it's called The Unthinkable by Amanda Ripley, and it's Who Survives When Disaster Strikes and Why.
Wow.
And I'm gonna have to go back and read it because it's been a number of years since I read it. It just brings a lot of things. A If I'm correct on it, a good understanding on how people react. I think it goes through different steps of who be
Mm-hmm.
a hero, or who's going to be a hero, or who's going to be a victim, who's going to survive, or who's going to be a victim. And I'm gonna read it again because it's just I think it just there's probably a lot of things in there that I'm thinking about is in that book. But it was a great book. It was a quick read, but it's called The Unthinkable by Amanda Ripley.
Yeah, well, I said earlier you don't have to be paranoid, but things like happened here in Memphis the last month. We've had power outages with storms and things, so that's like the unthinkable when your day's going good, and then some folks were out of power for a week, and really grind through that. So, I'm looking back at another instance here. It was in Oakland, California. So this story here is pretty interesting. This was in Oakland, California in 2016. It was the Ghost Ship Warehouse fire. Killed 36 people. I mean, it's amazing how you read about this stuff years later. So a fire broke out at an underground electronic music party in an Oakland, California warehouse turned artist collection known as the Ghost Ship. The fire, the source of which is still unknown to this day, trapped people on a second floor, killing 36. Officials later found that the building had no smoke detectors or sprinklers and contained numerous extension cords and large quantities of flammable materials. Derek Almania was the primary leaseholder and was sentenced to 12 years in prison back in 2016, but he only served 1.5 years as in-home confinement wearing an ankle monitor. So disasters like this, people pay consequences too. It's pretty sad. No smoke detectors or sprinklers in this facility with numerous extension cords. That is not a good combination.
Yeah, not a good combination at all. I mean, again, and you bring up that, and it's we go through, obviously nowadays with incidents like that happening. Certainly building codes have changed. They've become a lot stricter, especially we're going through a major renovation and expansion, and some of the codes are a lot different than they were on this expansion than when the building was originally built in 91 and went through an expansion in 2000. So the codes have changed, and certainly for the better. Obviously things cost a little bit more and that, but you're in there. One, you're protecting people and property. But yeah, it's just there are still places that I'm sure operate in without smoke detectors or locking doors with chains. I mean, I hope not. That doesn't happen anymore. But you brought up that it made me think of the nightclub fire in Rhode Island.
Nightclub.
Yep. That that one when I've seen some raw footage of that in one of my training classes and all that, and it actually seeing that it makes you wonder when you go to a bar, some of some of these bars or some places, even just a restaurant that's full, that again, where are the exits? A lot of the people didn't know where the emergency exits were from that. They went out, or they tried to exit the same way they went in, where they could have easily gone another direction and made it to another exit and made it out safely, but they just people got trampled or stuck at the door. And that, for whatever reason, that one sticks in my mind. When I again, personally, when I go into restaurants that are crowded, or maybe a bar or some type of nightclub or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. What in the line that business have you been in? What have you come across any people that who are famous, or did you ever have a chance to meet anybody? You got a funny story or two with some of your experiences? If I worked on your side of the business, I'd want to shake hands and take pictures with everybody, but you're not like that. You just go about the business.
Yeah, let's see. There's been a couple. Let's see. I had the opportunity to meet Ozzy Osbourne.
Nice. Ozzy
Osbourne. That was when I was in Memphis at the Pyramid Arena.
What was he like?
Had the opportunity to. This is sort of when he was recovering. He, just when you see him on TV, he talked the same. He's just a nice guy. Just seemed like he is on the show. I don't know whatever it was. What was it? The Osbournes or something?
Yeah, years ago.
Yeah. He's just kind of like that. He's just easygoing. I think when he says I'm gonna go do my workout. He was always doing his workouts prior to the show and all that.
Mm-hmm.
But met Neil Diamond.
Wow.
When he was there. Met a bunch of the wrestlers. I don't know if it was Sid Vicious, Sid Justice.
Yeah, Sid Vicious. Sid Vicious.
Sid Vicious.
I got a funny story about that. Back about 10, 12 years ago, Donna, me, my sister-in-law, Vivian, and my brother-in-law, Bobby, we went to this place in Crawfordsville, Arkansas called Uncle John's. It was like this small place, and it had the best spaghetti dinner, meat spaghetti, and it had the best bread pudding. So we were there one Saturday night. It was about 2010, I think, and we're sitting in there, and all of a sudden this Jeep pulls up, and it's Sid Vicious. The guy was freaking huge. And he walked in, he sat next to the table next to us, and I still to this day regret not, I was scared to ask him for a picture. Thought he'd flatten me, but I was like, that is the biggest human being I have ever seen. But he was very nice. He was talking to the people in there. I didn't want to bother him, but I should have. I should have said, hey, can I get a picture? But he was huge, and they were asking him where he was wrestling somewhere, but he was just hanging out, eating dinner. But I'll never forget that, Sid Vicious. So who else?
Yeah, most of the guy I met, Hacksaw, Jim Duggan. He was there. Yeah. This is like in the early '90s.
Yep.
Oh man, I'm sure there's a few others in there. Now I'm having to go back and think. I don't know. It's just there's been a lot. Again, I wasn't into it with getting all the pictures and all that. It's just not my thing. But I've met some pretty cool people and have enjoyed it immensely.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I did actually when I came to South Florida, we were doing an event. Fort Lauderdale International Boat Show and met Eric Trump.
Oh yeah, that's cool.
He was coming through, and I think that was October of 2016.
Wow. Yeah, that's yeah.
So that was pretty cool. Yeah, it's just been there's been a lot.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. In my time when I was at Pro Player Stadium, I met Jeb Bush, who was the back in Florida in the mid '90s, and he was the governor back then in the '90s in Florida. I met Jeb, and he was pretty cool. As far as like players, never really met any players. Maybe crossed paths with them. George Steinbrenner, when I was at Pro Player Stadium, when they had the first interleague game, he was on the concourse, and he got absolutely besieged. George Steinbrenner, everybody in South Florida was from New York at the series there, and it was like total pandemonium. I mean, it was unbelievable. I had never seen anything like it. Steinbrenner was just eating it up, and everybody's going, George. It was pretty cool. It's just like simple things like that. You look back at it, and it's pretty cool when you see things like that. You have some good memories. And then when
met JJ Watt when I was in Houston.
What's that?
Met JJ Watt when I was in Houston.
Oh yeah, what was he? JJ's a cool guy. I've never met him, but he's just a neat guy.
Yeah, good down to earth guy. Just again, being at the stadium, he was there. But yeah, nice guy. Say hello.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting.
He was huge.
Yeah, and I don't know if I'd do well in that business. I'd want to get pictures and talk to them for 30 minutes when they don't want to deal with that. I'm not that good at doing that. So, but
yeah,
I'm always that guy that wants to go up to somebody. But yeah, that's interesting because you meet a lot of interesting people. You see a lot of interesting things. You see that the normal people, or not normal people, but people who are the paying public go to see, they don't see. Back in 1999, I was working at the Pyramid. And they had the Valentine's Day Massacre for WWE, and they had the employee entrance there. And I just happened to go by there. My wife now, who I was dating at the time, Donna, she was there at the employee entrance, and I had just left. And as soon as I left, The Rock and Nick Foley walked in there. They did a skit, with a pallet or something like that for the Valentine's Day Massacre. They did a skit there. They pre-taped it, and I missed it. I mean, literally, I walked out and they walked in, and I was like, "You got to be kidding me! I can't believe it. I missed it."
Right.
Unbelievable. But yeah, it's a pretty interesting thing. I just wanted to see who you've been. Ozzy Osbourne. I mean, he must have been cool to me. That must have been neat.
Yeah, that was probably the one I liked the most, probably because he was the first concert that I saw.
That's right. Yes.
In 1981 at the Worcester Centrum.
The Worcester Centrum, the wonderful Worcester Centrum.
The Worcester Centrum. Yep. So.
Many a concert. You know, I did a podcast with a friend of mine up there, Sean Dunn, and we were talking about Van Halen for a few episodes. And it was 50 from where we lived in North Andover, 59 miles each way to go see a concert. So we were on the road for like 3 hours round trip, probably, to go see a concert. But that's incredible. 59 miles. That is just like, it's not like driving from here to Memphis or North Andover to Boston where we grew up. But it's pretty interesting. So basically,
right.
We were just talking tonight about situational awareness, you know, some things that have happened over the years that have changed how we live, how we go to events. And my brother Rick, who was worked in the business for over 30 years, has shed some light, you know, just when you go out and enjoy yourselves. But it's pretty interesting, like, you know, when you watch a game, there's a lot of moving parts that are going on behind the scenes that you don't know. And it's incredible. It's like a maze. There's like thousands of people working at events, and it all comes to fruition. So, but,
yeah.
So, well, you know, maybe when you get that book, The Unthinkable, maybe we can come back and talk about that. Cause you got me thinking about that too. I might have to look that one up as well. So,
yeah.
Amanda Ripley is the author.
Yes.
Amanda Ripley. Okay, I'll look that up, and maybe next time we can hook up. We can talk about that, and maybe just talk about some other things. But yeah, be careful when you go to events, and take care of yourself, and be aware of what's going on. And Rick, I want to thank you very much for coming on and really giving shed some light on your experience, and you know, how we can you know, be a little bit more vigilant. And this was pretty much an informational podcast for folks. So thank you so much, bro.
All right. Thank you for having me. And just remember, hope is not a plan.
Yeah. Hope is not a plan. It is exactly right. Hope is not a plan.